Hey everybody, Kevin here, and I just wanted to let everyone know that you are not crazy, and there is no episode number 30 in the feed, unfortunately. GarageBand converted some of our files to an 8-bit audio format, and we seem to have lost those audio files, but thankfully we were a week ahead in the curve. We had an extra episode in the can, so episode 31 is ready for you this week, and unfortunately we're going to be foregoing the game of the month for the next few months, just to get in line with the holidays and everything. Everyone's going to be doing some traveling in the month of December and everything, so, and unfortunately we're not going to have that game of the month Baba Is You episode, but hopefully you can enjoy episode number 31 here. Hey everybody, welcome to Pursuing Pixels. This is episode number 31, and my name's Kevin Portelli, and I'm here tonight with Randall Nolery.
Hey everybody.
DJ Mandolini.
Hello, hello.
And John Hines.
Hi.
We're on a little bit of a streak here, guys. We got the full gang for, I think, 4 episodes in a row.
Heck yeah.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
But we're back as always to talk about some more video games, and we're back to talk about another one we've all played a bunch of, and we actually all played just some earlier today. I shouldn't say we all. Randall has not played this one with us, but our buddy Glenn came over earlier, and we were playing. We were watching some wrestling actually first, and then we jumped over and played some Flat Heroes, which is something that DJ and I have dipped into, and this is like kind of like a single screen arcade game, although there's a ton of different modes, which I am super pumped on, but we'll get to that in a minute. But it's kind of like a single screen arcade game, up to 4 players. All the modes other than the versus modes seem to be the same, regardless of how many people are playing. And you're essentially you play as a square. And it's like a 2D platform. I think I might have already said that, but you're able to jump in midair and then jump into the air, then do a dash in midair until you land or maybe touch an enemy or projectile or something. And then later in the game, and you can do this pretty much from the get-go, but it teaches you that you have an attack, which is just kind of like a quick little like
a
radial explode. Yeah, like a shockwave is a good way to put it. And like that will, for some projectiles, you can like counter those as they attack you, or for some, you need to defeat them to like, they're almost like they'll trigger like a chain reaction, like of all these like black blobs will kind of start following you and chasing you, and when you trigger them, like they'll all kind of chain reaction blow up when you blow up just one of them. But there's a bunch of different, there's like these triangles that will kind of track you and then trace a line and like kind of bounce off the walls once they find their angle, and like cannons and kind of like sniper cannons that follow your movements. And it's the levels are scripted, but the enemies this is all like, everything's very geometric, really like clean, simplistic, minimalistic geometric design with just 4 or 5 different colors. And again, you're just mostly avoiding. You're playing as this square that's hopping around, and you can stick to the walls, which is kind of one of the main mechanics that sets us apart from a traditional platformer. Not by grabbing or anything, but like if you're jumping along the wall that's on the left, you're going to just hold down left on the joystick, and you can just stick to that wall until you let go of that. And then that's nice. And there will be, in the campaign at least, there's like walls that you can't touch. That is one small gripe. Like sometimes, for as clean as and simplistic and nice as the visual design is, they sometimes have like this really thin line that's the same color as the wall. That just means that wall you can't touch, but it's kind of hard to see that and once you die one time, it's no big deal. But for example, like as I was mentioning, all the different modes, like there's a campaign mode that you can again play 1 to 4 players. And that has 10 worlds with 15 levels each world ending with a boss fight. That again, like the boss fights are mostly, you do have to get an attack in, but it's mostly like avoid a bunch of waves of attacks. And it really feels like that. You're avoiding like waves of enemies and attacks and stuff. And yeah, I just like, after that, I got through like world 4 or 5 in the main like single player or the main campaign, and it opens up like a second campaign that also is 10 worlds with 15 levels each. Oof. And these levels are pretty short. Like the times that you beat them are probably 15 seconds, 30 seconds, maybe.
Cool. They're bite-sized levels.
So they're pretty bite-sized, but sometimes it's like any traditional like kind of hardcore, tough as nails platformer. You're going to be playing levels over and over again. And then, once you unlock this heroes mode, it's a whole second campaign that's right off I played just like the first 4 or 5 levels of that, and like difficulty, not spikes like crazy, but I mean, it's picking up right where I left off in like world 5 at the very beginning. So there's like this whole secondary campaign that's extra challenging, and there's versus modes that kind of have like a capture the flag or like capture this zone. Like, you know, DJ and I played it. That's only the two of us played the versus mode, but it's like stay inside this like ring that kind of moves, and like if we're both in it, the timer doesn't tick up, and it's like we had to get to like 10 seconds or 15 seconds to win or whatever it was. But yeah, and then the mode that we got kind of hooked on with all of us playing was this survival mode, which unfortunately is the same set of like, again, like the projectiles and the enemies do eventually kind of respond and react to you. So it's not the same exact series of events, but it is the same series of waves that are coming at you. The same like order of events, I guess. But there is a daily challenge mode. There's all kinds of like, there's like modes that we didn't even try. You have to like collect points to unlock these modes. And we haven't unlocked them all yet, but we got hooked on this survival mode, which unfortunately the online leaderboards don't have separate leaderboards for whether you're playing 1 player, 2 player, 3 player, 4 player, but it does show like next to your high score, it shows like a little emblem of if there's 4 squares, 3 squares, like how many players played. So you can at least see, okay, where do we stack up next to everybody? But we were able to get all the way up to, I don't know how many people are playing this game or are on the leaderboard, but we were able, with the 4 of us, with our buddy Glenn, we're able to get into the top 100, the top
That's
75 so cool. Actually. And we were, I mean, at least me, I felt like that instant adrenaline rush. My heart was pounding. My controller was drenched.
Yeah, there's a lot of screaming.
Yeah, and we were just like, just that, like, just, you know, that, like,
I'm dead. And you can someone to get me.
Yeah, and you can rescue your partners once they're out. And that is the main way that, like, obviously, if you're playing single player, you just have to survive and never take a hit, which is nearly impossible.
Right.
Or I shouldn't say impossible, but like the high score, the number 1 spot on the leaderboard is almost 20 minutes. And our 70-second slot, I think, was about almost 8 minutes. We got to like 7 minutes and 50 some seconds. So, but again, if we were playing single player, like we all had died probably 10 times within that time. But
we were all
because we were able to revive each other. Yeah.
That. If I wasn't trying to save you guys, I could have.
Yeah.
But no, what do you guys think? I've been talking everyone's ear off about this game, but what do you two think? I know you played just a little bit tonight, John, but I don't know. What do you two think?
Yeah, I liked it a lot. I thought it was a really fun thing, like learning the different patterns of all the different enemies, knowing which ones I was stronger against and which ones like we all were dreading, and like every time one showed up on the screen and we all started yelling at each other to dodge or stuff, and it was just a really fun and really easy to understand. Like Glenn, I know you two played a 2-player version of the survival mode, and he was like, maybe I won't do this. And then after watching you guys do that for a couple of minutes, he's like, no, I'm absolutely doing this.
He's like, count me in. Let's try this out.
Nice.
And was easily able to grasp, like there were multiple times where DJ and I both died, and he was the one coming to rescue us.
It was the first time that he played that you guys broke the 100 on the leaderboard.
Yeah. We hit we cracked the top 100, and he was able to grasp it. Again, he has a decent video game background. He doesn't play all the time, but he definitely, has familiarity with a controller and everything. This game does, unlike some of the games we've talked about, has some serious twitch mechanics. So I mean, you got to finesse the controller a little bit, but if you have some kind of 2D platforming background, I do think this game would be super easy to pick up. Just takes a tiny bit of getting used to that. Like, again, you play as just a square, and you don't run or you don't have legs or anything, so you're just kind of rolling along, and it does the 4 sides of the square do cause a little friction and a little moment. I don't know. It's not like a fluid sense of movement. It feels nice, but it's not like a steady, consistent. You do have to play, or we can bump into each other, for example.
Yes.
Our characters interact with one another. So you can kind of nudge each other out of the way. It can kind of screw each other up a little bit. And you're tumbling as
well. You're a square that you're not just moving up and down. You are if you move to the side, you are tumbling around. Spinning. So
I guess that's what.
If someone else lands on top of you, they might be expecting to jump over you, but if they catch a corner, then they might be stuck on you, and then they might be pushing you towards this other way. So there's a lot of running into each other and getting into each other's way when you're trying to dodge some more specific angles of shots that enemies are shooting at you.
When they're on top of you, does that just limit your movement? Do you feel that weight effectively as your controller?
If you're moving in opposite directions, absolutely.
Yeah.
But if you're moving in somewhat of the same direction, then it's just a matter of timing. Your jump might be blocked because they start jumping a little bit after you, but it's not it's not like weighing you down. Like
I think if John's character was resting on top of mine and he didn't touch a button, and if I jumped, I think I would do a full height jump.
Oh, okay.
With him staying on top of my character.
Gotcha.
It's just a matter of being able to jump on top of. You can't really plan.
You're zipping around the screen like crazy in a lot of instances. You do get a couple nice little like breathers of like, okay, we can. And we didn't realize at first that you could attack some of the enemies. Like there were some that you clearly have to like you need to eliminate them.
Yeah.
For the waves to move on. But there were some that we didn't realize, like those triangles that kind of will spin around for a quick second. It'll be like one triangle on the screen, it'll spin around, and then it'll pick a direction, and then it will bounce off. You know, it'll probably travel for a fixed amount of distance and bounce off however many walls, and you kind of like, you can see the path it's going to travel, and you have maybe just 2 seconds or so to get into a safe area before it, you know, launches down that path and probably destroys you. But like, we didn't realize that you could defeat those triangles once they were stationary for a second, or even in the process of moving. If you time it perfectly, you can like not counter it. It does still kill the enemy, but I just am having a lot of fun. Like I know I talk about this all the time on the podcast, but I get super sucked into like these high score chasing games.
Oh, yeah.
And especially when there's that cooperative element, and it is this sense of like, I need you to save me, and DJ's the last one left, or it's Glenn's first time, he's the last one. Like that sense of like, man, I was just having a blast. And for what it's worth, though, I was having a blast with this game playing solo. Like I stayed up till like 4 a.m. one night just playing through the campaign. Like, I'll play just a couple levels. I'll play a few more. Play a few more. And that's always, as we said before, that's always a sign of a good game. Great for me. Sign. If I'm just playing again and again, and it doesn't necessarily have to be staying up till 4 a.m, but just that I'm like, one more, and then I play 10 more. That's always the best sign.
It's so dangerous because they're so bite-sized, and, you know, you're not really going about the levels that differently. Like, you don't gain more mechanics as you go through the game. It's really just like you encounter different kinds of enemies, and maybe the level layout is a bit different. But, you know, really, you've got, like you were saying, same abilities for the entire game. Yeah,
it's good as for a high score game, though. It's kind of what you want, right?
Yeah, it really lets you get in and like master those mechanics, and I don't know. I just really like the combination of like, getting those mechanics down, but having that slight sense of, even though things are scripted, because so many of the enemies are like have some kind of like heat-seeking quality to them, or they have some kind of, there's
enough pressure on you where you're not going to be in the same position in multiple
can't just
runs.
like plan on like, I will move to this area and then I'll be safe. Like, it'll just be like, nope, you like wherever you move, it's dynamic enough that it's always going to change.
That's cool.
Yeah, like even in the survival mode where it is the same set every time, it's like, it's going to be totally different every time you play. I will say, like, if we played another couple runs, I probably would start to feel the tedium, like not necessarily in the future in general, but like if we played more tonight, I would probably start to hit that wall. I would probably start to hit that wall of like, you know, okay, we're going, and if we like, let's say we got another like, or we hit 10 minutes or something, like it would probably be hard to then go right back in and start from scratch and know that, okay, we're never going to make progress until we hit at least 10 minutes again. So there's a little small element of that, but again, with all these different modes in this game and the versus mode, so you can, as much as we're talking about the cooperative elements of this game, you can go full-blown competitive as well, which again, we only played a few rounds of that one specific mode, which there were many more of, but I think I had a lot of fun with that. I thought that, and adding more players into the mix would only make it more fun, I think. So
nice.
Yeah. But I think we can pretty much wrap up Flat Heroes there, but it's definitely one that popped on my radar because it was a game that I think was available on the Switch eShop like a little earlier on, like when the eShop didn't have 4,000 games on it. And I was just like, hey, this looks kind of cool. And I just had it on my wish list for a long time and eventually just picked it up. It's only $10 normal price and well worth it for the experience in general, but the package is just fully fleshed out. Other than, you know, the soundtrack gets a little repetitive, a little redundant. But it's another great game to just throw on a podcast or throw on your own music for. So not that the music isn't good, because it is great.
Music's great.
Yeah, just a little repetitive is all. But we can move on from there to a game that DJ picked up a little earlier today. I think you started playing it, but got a decent amount of time into. But why don't you talk a little bit about Planet Alpha, DJ?
Yeah, so little background. Been playing a lot of either, you know, mentally demanding or like like Twitch control demanding games lately. You know, played Flat Heroes, Standby, Cedars, Baba, and
Yeah.
I just like I needed to change things up a bit, so picked up this demo for Planet Alpha, which is an isometric kind of puzzle platformer, kind of like the game Inside.
Yeah, Inside or Limbo, or just slightly more like cinematic platformer.
Mainly like you're running to the right. But you're just this alien that's, crashed on this planet. And it is one of the more beautiful looking games, I'd say.
It's got a nice look. It's got a nice look to it, and I'm sure we're playing it on the Switch, or DJ's playing it on the Switch, and I played the demo as well. And watch him play a little. I would imagine it probably only looks better on other platforms.
For sure.
But it still looks nice. It's a really like unique and vivid art style, like really colorful and really just has a lot of personality.
I would compare it pretty closely to the Avatar movie in terms of aesthetic.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's a decent touchstone. I've actually never seen the movie, but just the general like color palette and like
just like a lot of
fluorescent.
the lighting, I think is where a lot of the prettiness or whatever comes in.
Yeah.
But yeah, this has been a pretty like chill game, and I think I really needed that lately. So I'm just kind of like there's no dialogue at all, so I'm just like exploring this world with like lots of different environments, and like there are these robots that are like out to get me. I don't know why they're here. I gotta hide from them. Then like there's all the wildlife on the planet, some of which is cute and some of which is hostile. Like there's big like bugs that'll attack you, and sometimes you have to figure out how to like get the native bugs to go after the hostile robot aliens that are coming here.
Oh, that's kind of cool though.
Yeah, so like kind of decent amount of like scripted kind of puzzles, but like it's just a good looking game that's really chill because there's not a ton of music or anything. It's got a nice environment. I don't know. I'm liking it.
Yeah, this is from Team 17, and this is actually their 100th published game. I remember seeing that when I booted up the demo, and I think this is actually developed by them. I could be wrong about that, but I think this one they actually did have their hands on the development. And I don't know. I played the demo and I really bounced off this game big time, and I did. The visuals of the game are what caught my eye. I was like, oh, it looks great. And booting it up, and one of the things that put me off right off the bat is the opening of this game. I'm assuming the demo started off with just the very intro of the game, and you play this like, it does that kind of, I always think of like Uncharted, where you're like, oh, you have to like, you're in this little cutscene or probably loading scene, and you have to like walk through this corridor. Like it won't let you run. It won't let you do anything other than walk at a glacial pace.
Right.
And like,
you're like limping through the beginning.
Yeah. You like crash land and you limp, and it goes on for a long time. Like I was like, I must have missed something, like at least a couple minutes, like of just holding down right.
Yep.
And limping and dragging your leg behind you. And I was just like, what the hell is this game? And then you like black out eventually or something, and then you wake up. And then I was just having a really hard time after that, like distinguishing, as beautiful as the game looks, I was having a really hard time, like what's in the foreground, what's in the background, what's interactive, what is not, what can I climb, what can I not climb, how high can I jump? It doesn't fully control like one of those like Prince of Persia style games where it's like a little more, but it has a tiny bit of that like deliberate control to it, where it doesn't feel fluid like a Mario game as far as the platforming goes. It has a little bit of that stiffness.
Bit of physics,
animation, priority stuff going on a little bit.
That's a perfect way to put it. And I just bounced off it really hard. I was just like, I have no interest in playing this game after playing the demo, but after watching you play, and again, I mean, I love the visuals, so I mean, I want to play it, but
to be fair, I wasn't showing you. I wasn't doing the game service with what I was showing you.
Yeah, you were kind of stuck on a puzzle, sort of.
And it was because, before that point, I had forgotten that I just gained a new mechanic, and so I should have been using that. So that was my fault.
Nice.
No, that's fine. And yeah, I don't know. I guess
was it? I feel like I expected it to be the floatiness that put you off a bit. Because I
That's
know
definitely part
you
of
don't
it,
like
for sure.
Rayman Legends.
Yeah.
Oh, we can
Get
talk
the-
some Rayman if you want to.
But at least you could justify it in this game, like, oh, you're on a different planet. Maybe the
Yeah.
gravity's different or something like that.
There's some portals that take you to like some like other dimensions or whatever where you're even floatier.
Okay. I guess like it didn't feel like the platforming was that deliberate. Like it didn't seem like, oh, you got to nail this pixel perfect jump. So it didn't bother me as much in that regard. It was mostly just being able to decipher the level. But are you feeling like, you know, I know you compared this to like Inside or Limbo, or I guess I threw Limbo out there, but Limbo, more so Limbo, but I felt like that was like a big time trial and error game. Like it's basically like you keep walking along and all of a sudden you get killed by something that you essentially had no way of avoiding without knowing.
Series
it
of
was coming.
vignettes, kind of, but in a cool
which
way.
is it was definitely awesome, and it was, especially at the time, there was nothing like that before. Really, I'm sure there's something, but you know, I hadn't personally played much like it before.
Right.
But are you feeling like it's kind of more that structure, or are you feeling like you're actually making progress and solving puzzles?
There's maybe been a little bit of that, but I think there have been some puzzles where, you know, I was able to figure it out and not have to do a trial and error situation. Like definitely not to the extent that I did with Limbo. And I guess I think it clearly laid the level out and what you can interact with. I mean, I do understand that like sometimes foreground, background can be hard to distinguish, like in that kind of camera perspective. But I think they do a good job at some points of like, you know, ledges that are kind of like this color, you can like, or something you can like grab onto or
okay,
whatnot.
maybe I just didn't either decipher that or just didn't play enough to realize that, because that was like one of the main things I was having trouble with, was like seeing, oh, I can grab that ledge and jump up and grab there. So maybe I just didn't get far enough to realize, oh, all the ledges I can grab are like lit up a little bit like this, or you know, whatever it is.
Yeah, it's not quite that clear, but like I think I did get a better idea of like, okay, like I've seen something like that before. I know I can do that again.
Yeah, give me those yellow pipes in Uncharted. Let me know exactly where I can jump. No, I don't want it to be that scripted for me, but yeah, I don't know. I wasn't fully grabbed by this game, but I'm definitely more curious now that you're into it and you're actually playing it. You know, because I played 5 minutes of a demo.
I guess it depends on like, you know, what exactly the mindset of what you're trying to get out of a game when you boot it up. Like I wanted something more relaxing, so this is kind of, you know, scratching the itch that I had in mind.
Right.
You know, maybe if you went into it playing the demo with a different mindset your first time, maybe it could have soured you.
Yeah, or I just had different expectations or something, maybe. So, which I don't even remember what they were at this point, but I just remember being like, man, that game looks so cool, and just kind of let me down after the demo. But maybe I'll boot it up again and give it another try. But I think we can move on from there. And I think we can talk about a game that Randall and I have been playing, and a little bit of a semi follow-up from a couple weeks ago when we talked about Cave Story. And I just couldn't help myself, and I guess Randall couldn't either.
That's right.
And we just dove right into Kero Blaster, which was Studio Pixel's follow-up to Cave Story, which I think this was originally a mobile game, if I'm not mistaken.
I
It was
saw
originally
some
released
stuff on there. It looks like it officially released first on PC, like in 2014. But yeah, I've seen some allusions to it being mobile at some point as well. So
It definitely feels like it strips away not a ton of the mechanics, but it definitely feels like a little more primitive or simplistic than Cave Story. So something that, again, I personally hate playing a game with a touch digital D-pad or whatever, so
especially
I wouldn't even consider it. Yeah, it gets a little twitchy later on, but you know, some of the stuff I could see it sort of working if you're somebody who's like, that's just the way you grew up playing games, or you know, if you're just more attuned to that. I just can't really wrap my head around it.
You saying that about the mobile game first makes me realize that's probably why the game is zoomed in as it is. Like that widescreen, zoomed in, chunky pixels would definitely fit a mobile screen aspect ratio. Because I'm like, man, like it's so zoomed in, it feels like a Game Boy Color game that they made widescreen to me.
Yeah, that's and it's kind of funny because Cave Story is the exact opposite. It's like super zoomed out with these tiny little pixel characters, and this is like even less detail in the pixels,
Right.
and then it's even more zoomed in. It's again, I didn't grow up playing a ton of like Commodore 64, but
Yeah.
it has kind of that vibe to it.
does.
Like it doesn't have like NES retro vibes. It's definitely
Maybe like
way
early
chunkier, like
NES.
Atari,
Yeah.
or like early NES or later Atari stuff.
Yeah.
But anyways, it's like you play as this frog, and it's another side-scrolling action platformer, run and gun kind of deal.
A little slower
And,
running gun, but yeah.
Yeah, a little bit slower, and it's I guess it's somewhat similarly paced to Cave Story. You have a little bit of that like floatiness to the jump.
Yep.
But once you get used to it, it feels nice. And I guess you just kind of play as this frog. It is more they're all like level based. You're not doing any exploration. Other than maybe finding a secret little treasure chest or something in any level, but you're not like, maybe I'll go this path, or maybe I'm unlocking a different story. Maybe there are different stories or something, I don't know, but it felt like level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. And then the game, it seemed like it was really going to be super short. Like I was only about an hour in, and it seemed like this is the last level. Like the characters, the NPCs were kind of like these little cutscenes that almost feel like Pac-Man-esque, like in between levels. Like they have a little bit of that, just like, quick little cutscene, a little longer than a Pac-Man little vignette, but has like a little bit of that vibe to it, which I liked a lot.
That's a good call.
And again, another game that I'm just bouncing all over the place now, but like just a fantastic soundtrack.
Yeah,
I don't know how you feel, right? Randall, but this guy can just crank out the jams, whether it's like an energetic, like hype you up boss fight jam, or whether it's a just a boppy little tune to get you through like a cheerful level, or like an underground cave kind of menacing. So just any kind of tune.
Yep. I found the main theme
delivers.
of Kero Blaster was just stuck in my head today. Like, that's a good sign.
I've been humming it like crazy.
Yeah.
All the tunes in this game.
I know.
Or most of the tunes, I should say.
Yeah.
And one of the things that also I felt similarly in Cave Story, but I really appreciated the boss battles in this game. A lot of times that can be like the weaker element of a video game for me, like in something like Dead Cells, which I've talked about before. Like the boss fights are my least favorite part of these games, because every now and then they can provide a really cool like puzzle-esque challenge, but a lot of times it is just I don't know, just like trial and error. I don't know, it just doesn't feel as satisfying as like solving the problems that are in a lot of games, I guess.
Yeah.
But I thought these boss fights were really fun, and like it had almost like a shmup element to them at times. Like you get a little, not bullet hell, but a lot of projectiles flying around, and you're able to kind of just blast away at will.
I think it leans into the strength of the simplicity of the control scheme of this game. Like you just really, you can move left and right, you can jump, and you can shoot. Either you can shoot straight forward in the direction you're going, or you can kind of lock to shoot straight up, and that's pretty much it.
And that's actually a good point, because one of the interesting things about the shooting mechanic is like, so if you're running to the right and you're holding down shoot, you're going to be shooting to the right.
Yep.
But if you continue to hold that down and then you start running to the left, you'll essentially be backpedaling and continue to shoot to the right. And like Randall was saying, if you're shooting up, essentially whatever direction you're shooting in, if you continue to hold that down, you will stay locked in that direction. So some of the boss fights, you kind of almost have to do that. You have to make sure, hey, I'm facing left, and then I'm backing up and dodging these attacks, but I'm still shooting forward. And unlike Cave Story, like Cave Story had the element where each weapon can level up, and I guess it can in Kero Blaster as well, but instead of leveling up through like those little like golden prisms that you collect after you kill enemies and whatnot, these are things that you buy after you collect I don't know if I can't remember if they're coins or whatever
coins,
they are. That's like money. Because you sometimes get like big bags of money, or you get like, but you collect enough coins of those and you can buy like either extra hearts for yourself, your health bar, or an extra continue, or you can, again, like level up all your weapons. They do have a max level. Yeah. And I got everything maxed out, at least the 5 weapons. And there's a bunch of different weapons. There's like, just like the regular kind of blaster that eventually levels up to like a laser. You have like a spread shot that eventually like gets huge spread. You get a flamethrower that kind of like encircles you with like a flame shield. I mean, you're almost like filling the entire screen with bullets. Like that spread shot, or like there's another shot that's just like this big like green beam. That might have been the spread shot, like an earlier.
That was,
Yeah, and it just like fills, again, because that's zoomed in perspective. And your character's a decent size, not like a tiny little pixel character. So
he's a chunky
just kind of
like, he's cute.
Yeah, and you're just kind of plowing through the levels and just holding down shoot for most of the time. And it's interesting because like I wouldn't find myself getting stuck that much, but then I would all of a sudden just be like, shit, this boss is super hard, or this like little chunk of this level. And it is a little more forgiving than Cave Story, like we talked about last week, where there's like, oh, you have to beat this last string of bosses like all in one continue, where like you would have to start the level over. You get like one set of lives, 3 continues, and you can buy more continues or find them in the levels occasionally. But if you get a game over, you have to start the level over, even if you're on the final boss. But if you've beaten any of like the mini bosses or any of like the random things you have to trigger in a level to open a door or something like that, those would all stay completed. So like the final boss, there was like 3 tiers of that boss. But once you had beaten them and I got a game over, I was only had to do that last tier of the boss.
That was so
even though I had to beat the whole level, but I only had to beat the boss, the final. And yeah, I don't think I could have done it.
No.
Which I was not able to do in Cave Story. There's like a 4-phase boss at the end. And I'm just like, oh my God. And I mean, it does like release some minions that you can recover health from.
But that's not consistent either. You can't count on that.
No. Well, in the final boss battle of Cave Story, you can kind of. It's a little more like part of that mechanic, because it is meant for you to be like, oh fuck, I have no health left, and okay, I can recover some, but it's still very difficult. And this game is Kero Blaster is a little bit less predictable. You can get lucky, but you definitely can't count on getting those health pickups.
Which I also another element that is very, very nice that Studio Pixel did is you carry your coins over between deaths and continues, and thank God that you can.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and I love that mechanic of like, so when you get a game over, you wake up in the hospital, and then you can stop at like the checkout as you're checking out, and you get an opportunity to buy more upgrades if you want to. So essentially, I mean, there is a cap, I guess, but essentially, at a point, like if you kind of get stuck, you could keep playing and you'd keep dying and getting game overs, but you're getting more coins.
Yeah.
And then you're able to spend those and level up to the max, and then hopefully be able to get through this game. And I know, Randall, both you and I were able to beat this game, and it does unlock a hard mode, which I was reading. Yeah. I was reading a little bit about that. And apparently it is like fully like remixed levels using the same tile sets, but like differently designed levels. I played just a quick chunk of the first level and that was it, but
I did the same. And you know, the most important thing is your frog is now blue and he's also cute, so that's important. But yeah, apparently there's more levels I was reading too. That's the way it seemed anyway. So I'm kind of curious, but man, even basic enemies are more bullet spongy, so it's tough.
Yeah. And from what I did read a little bit more, and there is apparently another mode after that, after you beat this one, that is like back to more the original setup, but with like less power-up upgrade options and stuff like that. It's more of a traditional hard mode, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, just really a charming game. I really had a blast with this one.
Yep.
No pun intended.
Blast.
Yeah. But I just like, it was one that I just found myself gravitating back to again and again and again. It only took about 3 hours to run through the whole game. It's a nice, short, compact experience, which definitely, again, makes sense if it was intended as a mobile experience, or at least that was maybe thought of as a platform it was going to be available on.
Yep.
It's kind of perfect for bite-sized chunks. But I really appreciated, too, how this game, you know, the first 4 levels that seemed like it was maybe, the game was seeming like it was maybe going to be a really short experience, like, the levels really opened up after that. Like the 5th, 6th, and 7th levels were quite a bit more substantial than those opening levels.
Yeah.
Just like more ideas in them, more different settings, more enemies. Just when I thought the game was like, oh, that was a cute little experience, it kind of like busted open for just a little more to kind of put it over that hump of like, oh, that was a pretty memorable experience as opposed to just like a pretty cute one that I had a fun time with, you know?
It was so satisfying how just straightforward it is gameplay wise too. I don't know, just it sucked me in immediately, and same way, it was just super addictive, and I saw the game through in I think 2 nights. I really liked it.
Same here, 2-3 nights, and as we've talked about a bunch of times before on the podcast, Randall, that's not your or my style to actually just beat a game in any capacity, let alone plow through it in a couple sittings. So
love seeing credits.
Yeah, it's great. It's a good feeling. Yeah. Maybe I'll see him at the end of Cave Story someday.
Yeah,
but but until then, I think we can move on from there. If unless you had anything more to add to Kero Blaster, Randall.
I just really enjoy it. Eventually, I'll go back and see my buddy, the master of custodial sciences, help him destroy some more random plants and pixelated, super chunky creatures. It's fun.
Yeah, I'll be back on that Zangief mode for sure.
That's right. Make sure you wear the jacket. It's an extra hit point.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so many great little touches in this game. But anyways, we'll move on from Kero Blaster to some non-video gaming, although a little bit of a video game tie-in. But John got together with his family over the past week and played some Civilization, the board game, which unfortunately is long out of print. Yes. But until John informed me about this, I didn't even know it existed. So why don't you take it away?
So Civilization, the board game, is what the computer game is based off of. It was a game made in, I believe, either the late 70s or the early 80s.
Oh, wow.
And it is an incredibly complicated board game that has become a staple in my family, although my family has only, at least in the games that I have played with my family, I have only completed the game 2 times because every time that we do, we have to play it over a weekend because we can never finish a single game in a day.
Wow.
This playtime, I think, was one of our faster games, and it took 14 hours of play time.
A little longer than Kero Blaster.
Yeah.
You love your family.
A little bit. Oh, I do. Even when we have numerous civil wars that we wage against each other and involve ourselves in. But it takes place around like the Mediterranean. The board is, you have, I believe, 9 different civilizations, from Egypt to Assyria to Thrace to Italy. And like we play with the maximum number of 7 people. And you expand your civilizations. There are, I think, 16 phases of gameplay where you first start by per turn.
Oh my god! Give me a computer.
Where I was gonna pull them up on my phone if we can edit out me pulling up. Because I want.
It's really easy once you learn all 16 phases, guys. Come on.
It's a very it's honestly kind of a simple game. You just need to. It's a simple phases that are just complicated when you play them in sequence. It's more of a long game than it is a complex game.
I can see that.
You got your info, John?
Yes, I have found the Civilization sequence of play. It is a 13 phase.
Oh, it's only 13 phases.
Yeah, only 13 phases in a single turn, where you go from collecting taxation and, in parentheses, revolts if you can't collect enough taxation. Then there's population expansion, census, constructing ships, movement, conflict, building cities, removing surplus population and reducing unsupported cities, acquiring trade cards or buying gold, trade, then acquiring civilization cards and returning excess trade cards, resolving calamities, reducing unsupported cities, and then you alter the archaeological succession table, which is how you determine if you've won or not.
And how much does that follow the computer game, or does the computer game simplify that? Because I've never played any of the Civilization games. I mean, I know that it's like I guess I don't know if they're all like this, but it's like a hex-based, city builder or civilization builder, I guess. But like, it's sort of, I get the premise of it, I guess, but like how closely is the board game and the computer game tied?
So the computer game is a more streamlined version of the board game, but it has significantly more complicated things that are involved in it. The trade mechanics aren't really involved as much because unless you're doing specific routes in things in later games. I've also only played Civ 5 and Civ 6 on. I haven't played any of the earlier ones, which I might be more faithful recreations of the board game.
Right.
With all warts and all.
Yeah.
But yes, the board game itself, like each phase is pretty much its own game. Like a game could be made out of each phase,
each individual mechanic.
Right. There's like a kind of a risk part where you have the conflicts where you're moving your tokens into other people's spaces, and based on, if you have metalworking as a civilization card, then there are different rules on how you resolve those conflicts. And then if you're on a specific tile that you can build a city on, it only takes 6, or it takes 12 if it's not. And then certain squares can only support 5 people. Certain squares can only support 1 people, and that's based off of like the geography of the area. So it's cool. A lot more arid in the desert, but then there's also floodplains. So there are just so many mechanics that are just built on top of them, and like it's an incredibly well balanced game for something that is so complicated.
And this is the board game.
The board game itself. I think the main thing that has carried over between the board game and the computer game is the civilization cards, which are the main things that will advance a civilization. Like very early on, there's a card that's called Mysticism that is not worth anything, doesn't really give you any special abilities, but it's a way that you can advance early on by acquiring. But then the later on you get, if you in the original version of the board game, you can only acquire a certain amount of these cards. So because it's such a low value card, it's only worth 30 points as opposed to Law, which is 170.
Okay.
Or Philosophy, which is 240.
Okay.
And all of those like much higher ones like completely alter different game mechanics. Like if you get the Iconoclasm and Heresy card, like if you have Philosophy, it functions completely different than if you don't. And there are just so many different things that I'm really amazed at how well balanced the game is for something that just has an absurd amount of mechanics in it.
Yeah. Now you said you and your family have been playing this for years, if not decades together.
Well, they have. It was actually my parents and some of their friends that they met back in college that they've been playing for decades, and then they had kids, and some of their kids were nerds too, so we decided to play it with them.
Now, like, do you feel like, again, this is a game that's out of print, at least in cardboard form, but do you feel like if you didn't have like that experience of having someone who knows the game really well kind of shepherding you in? Because one of the nice things that I would imagine for all this sounds super interesting to me, but a lot of these board games, there's so much to keep track of, and especially with like, it sounds like this game is like the board itself is evolving, and you're having to take turns with that. So if you really don't have someone who really understands and knows the rules of the game, and we used to get together and play board games a lot, and there'd always be like discrepancies of like, you read the rule and it's like, what does that actually mean? And I really like the idea of playing this on a computer or on Switch or whatever console. And like all the rules are set in stone, and like the turns that are just progressing, like the world evolving, or like some of these new expansion packs, which I'm assuming that are in Civ 6, for example, like the Gathering Storm expansion pack, which just was released on Switch. That's going to have like effects on like if you're evolving too quickly industrially, you're gonna eventually, over the course of the history of time, as you play your campaign or whatever, like the environment is going to be affected by that,
right?
And that seems like something that would be really difficult, if nearly impossible, to implement into a board game.
And that's actually a thing that I really like. I played a lot of Civ 6, which I don't get the same feeling from it. Like I don't think that they're really comparable experiences, like the board game and the computer game. But
I mean, nothing can substitute for like sitting around a table with 7 people for 14 hours. And
but like but the amount of customization in Civ 6, I think, is incredible. Like I still get the feeling of like the satisfaction of like Succession, where you have like your settler, that's what you make your first capital city, and then from there you grow out and you can get traders, and you can there are just all the same mechanics, but just like so much more customization can go into, even from the very the setup stage, where you're just like saying, okay, how many other civilizations are going to be there? How many city states are there going to be? So those aren't people who are vying for, also like expanding their civilization, but you can trade with them.
So you can essentially change like the in-game rule sets.
Yes.
Wow. Play different like modes per se, in quotes.
And you can assign like they can be random civilizations, or you can design and like go against specific ones because some of them have different abilities than them. Like the amount of customization, like just from the get-go in the computer game version of it, is it was so incredible.
I had no idea. I thought it was more like one campaign oriented than that for some reason. That's crazy.
No, as far as I know, honestly, I've never, if there is a campaign mode, I've never played it.
Wow.
Because I've only ever gone into custom games. And like, I at first, like what I would do is, I really just wanted it as like kind of a relaxing game. So I would set it as like 2 civilizations on a somewhat small map. And then I would hunt for the other civilization as fast as possible and just take them out. And then it's like, oh, you won. And I'm like, I'm just going to keep playing.
Let me just optimize my civilization.
And that would be like in turn like 7 or whatever that I would take them out. And then by turn like 300, I've expanded to like all of the borders of the entire map. I've explored everything. You can never turn barbarians off. So there's always going to be something that you're fighting against. But for the most part, it's just a way more relaxing thing mode that I would do.
Almost like a city builder.
Right.
Like you're just trying to
grow resource
the
management.
Yeah.
But like at the same time, like after I did that for a while, I was like, all right, well, let's turn on a couple of them. Like and that was a good way for me to ease myself into it and like start playing the way that like people who were angry on the internet said that I was playing the game wrong.
What are you primarily playing Civ 6 on, John?
On Switch, which also makes it sound like my Switch is going to melt.
Pushing to the limits.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm really curious. Like Civ 6, I will say like the art style, not so much the in game, but like the character designs on like some of for the cutscenes or whatever you want to call them, like are a little. I guess it's just not to my taste because they don't look bad. They're like well illustrated. It's just not a style I like. They're like really like scrawny, like we saw. We were looking through the screenshots and there's like a screenshot with Gandhi in it, and he just looks so cartoony, I guess. And it's just like a little too much.
It's very
leaning
hyper
into that.
stylized.
Yeah. But I don't know. Like I've heard really great things about this Gathering the Storm DLC, which is that, or Gathering Storm, whatever it's called, where it factors in these like natural disasters and stuff like that. It can really throw you for a loop.
Yeah.
Which I always like that in games for some reason, getting thrown for a loop, especially when it is a game that you're meant to like invest all this time into and this energy. Well, maybe not energy. You're probably just laying on the couch, but you know what I mean? Like this mental energy. And, yeah, I don't know. I like that. So now that these DLCs are available, I mean, it is a pretty expensive game. Like it's a full price $60 game that does go on sale from time to time. But then these 2 DLC packages they come together. I think the other one's called Rise and Fall, and I don't know too much about that one. Mm-hmm. But it's like that package itself is another $50. So I mean, you're talking about a lot of dough.
Yep.
But I'm
still probably going to get it.
Like, yeah, and I mean, from what I understand, it adds a ton of new civilizations that you can pick from between the 2 expansions, and like that. Each civilization is not like a new game, but I mean, they all have different mechanics from what I understand, and like really changes it. And then when you do factor in these like weather mechanics that are literally not even in the core game, I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of new stuff here. And again, if this is your kind of game, I think there's a lot there to chew on, that this could be like just your game that you play. I mean, these are the types of games that I could see someone who really doesn't play games, but I'm into Civ, you know,
right.
and I play them all, and I get all the new ones, and I get all the DLCs because I'm just into that mechanic, you know, or this like, this is my me time, I guess. And I kind of like that. This game, I don't know. It's speaking my language, even though the visuals don't 100%. Although I do like the style of like the world map. I like that like slight curve to the map, and like
it's actually also a thing that really makes like at least the Switch chug is the fact that like you can zoom in and zoom out like an incredible amount. Like I was playing the game zoomed out, and then I think I accidentally hit a shoulder button, and then like it was just going in, and I was like, this is still going in. I just getting more and more detailed, and like I am seeing Broadway right now because that was one of the things that I had built in one of my cities. That's cool. And it's just like, this is an absurd amount of detail, and it looks great.
Yeah. And it looks great on the Switch.
It looks great. It just sounds like there's a jet engine running.
Yeah. How does it run though? I mean, do you feel like it actually chugging in the game, or do you feel
chugs once you get to like the point where there is so much happening on screen? Very early on in the Civilization, once you're like right around once you hit like the BC AD turnover. That's about when things start getting a little rough.
Yeah. Okay. Well, good to know, because this one's been on my radar and kind of one that I assumed like, oh, it would also probably be better to play this on a PC or on a computer with a mouse and keyboard kind of situation, and it probably would play a little better that way. But
yeah,
how are you feeling like the controller works as an input device for this game?
Controller works great. I've had no issues with it. I've never noticed it like, selecting a tile that I never meant to. It's always been exactly what I want. But honestly, like if I had, I don't own a gaming computer.
Yeah, same
so
here.
Like, but if I had, like I 100% would have picked this up on PC over Switch.
Yeah, it's like the same reason I haven't picked up Cities Skylines on the Switch, because it's like I don't have a good PC setup for gaming. I would probably rather play it there. That seems to be the way to play this game. And Switch seems like it would just be a tedious process of like, oh, I accidentally made that road a little too crooked. And
I will say specifically with Cities Skyline that like it is a little bit harder to input stuff with a controller than I think a mouse would be.
Okay.
And that being said, though, these games where you're going to spend a ton of time, just hours upon hours, the Switch is just my go-to for that purpose, right?
Oh yeah.
Just this seems like flexibility.
Yeah, it seems like the perfect like laying in bed game before, let me crank out a half hour before I fall asleep,
Yep.
Yeah.
It seems kind of perfect for that. So
yeah, once I get into playing Civilization, it's pretty much the only game I'm going to be playing for a while.
Yeah, and again, even something that I didn't spend anywhere probably near as much time as you have with Civ, but like even something like Into the Breach, took a little second to get you, like, again, maybe mouse and keyboard, it would be nice to just click on stuff and the immediacy of that. But like, as soon as I learned what all the shoulder buttons did and what all the face buttons did, as soon as you kind of internalize that, it felt pretty second nature. So if this can, again, they're nice big chunky hexes, like it's not like it's, oh man, they're so near each other, or that space you can't see which one's which. It's pretty clear, I feel like, with what I can see from Civ. So yeah, I don't know. Glad to hear that it's a decent experience on console as well. So
yeah.
All right, I think we can pretty much wrap it up there this week. Thanks for tuning in, everyone, and we'll be back next Monday. In the meantime, you can find us, as always, at pursuingpixels.com, Twitter, Instagram, anywhere else on the internet that we have it set up. And again, until next Monday, we'll catch you next week. Take care.
See ya.
So long.
Bye-bye.
Now.
I have a structured settlement and I need cash now.
Wow.
Sorry, what? I thought you were doing, like, I am the very model of a modern major general for a second.
That might be what they're parodying. I don't know. It's those J.G. Wentworth commercials. You guys remember those?
Yeah. Yes.
877 cash now.
It's my money and I need that.
Use it when you need it.
Yeah, fuck those people, though.
Title Max gets you real money.